An American heiress worth $75 million spent nearly 30 years in a vegetative state. Her family spent over $10 million just to keep her heart beating. Meanwhile, her husband lived in her luxury Fifth Avenue apartment entirely rent-free. This was not a tragic twist of fate. This was a calculated financial play. The tragic fate of Sunny von Bülow and the resulting Sunny von Bülow coma became the centerpiece of the notorious von Bülow Affair. The legal battle that followed was later immortalized in the film Reversal of Fortune. At the heart of this dark drama was Klaus von Bülow, a man accused of attempting to end his wife's life. To save himself, he hired the legendary Alan Dershowitz von Bülow defense lawyer to dismantle the state's case. The entire case rested on a single, mundane object hidden deep inside a master closet. A small, black vinyl pouch. Inside was a secret that took 2 trials, the most expensive defense team in history, and a blood feud between old money and European royalty to untangle. We will expose exactly what was hidden in that black vinyl pouch in Chapter 5. This is the cold, calculated history of the von Bülow Affair. Sunny Crawford was born into absolute privilege. Her father was a utilities titan who left her $75 million when she was only 4 years old. In the 1930s, this was an unfathomable sum of money. She was known in high society as the 100% girl. She had everything. Her skin was flawless, her fortune was secure, her social status was unmatched. But everything was not enough. She was fragile, lonely, and desperate for a purpose. She spent her youth drifting through European resorts, looking for something that money could not buy. Enter Klaus Borberg. He was a Danish social climber with grand ambitions. He changed his name to Klaus von Bülow to sound like Prussian nobility. He was cold. He was brilliant. He became the right-hand man to J. Paul Getty, the richest oil tycoon on earth. Klaus knew how to manage wealthy monsters. He understood how the ultra-rich thought, how they hid their assets, and how they controlled people. In 1966, he married Sunny. It seemed like the ultimate merger of old money and European sophistication. But behind the gilded gates of their Newport estate, a financial trap was quietly closing around Klaus. He was about to discover that marrying into millions is easy, but surviving the prenup is a deadly business. Chapter 2. Building the Monopoly. The wedding in 1966 was not a romance. It was a hostile takeover. Klaus von Bülow had successfully negotiated his way into the ultimate prize, Sunny Crawford. But the moment the ink dried on the marriage certificate, Klaus realized the golden cage was locked from the outside. Sunny was worth $75 million. In today's money, that is closer to $400 million. The capital was locked tight in ironclad trusts managed by conservative bank trustees. Klaus was a highly paid executive, but his salary was pocket change compared to the ocean of wealth he now swam in. He lived in a palatial 14-room apartment on Fifth Avenue. He summered at Clarendon Court, a legendary 20-room coal baron mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. He drank the finest vintage wines. He wore bespoke suits. But he did not own a single brick of this empire. The prenuptial agreement was a masterpiece of legal cruelty. It was designed by old money lawyers to protect the dynasty from European fortune hunters. If the marriage ended in divorce, Klaus would receive nothing, not a single dollar. He would be evicted from Fifth Avenue, He would be barred from Clarendon Court. He would return to the cold streets of London with empty pockets and a ruined reputation. But every contract has a vulnerability. Klaus studied the estate plan. He found the glitch in the machine. If Sunny died while they were still legally married, the financial landscape transformed completely. Under the terms of Sunny's will, Klaus would inherit $14 million outright. More importantly, he would receive life tenancy of Clarendon Court and the Fifth Avenue apartment. He would remain a king, funded by her dead hand. This created a monstrous mathematical equation. If he stayed married to a woman he increasingly despised, he remained a glorified servant. If he divorced her, he faced absolute financial annihilation. But if she ceased to exist, he became a multimillionaire. The math was simple. The execution would be biological chess. Klaus began to study his wife's daily vulnerabilities, waiting for the perfect moment to exploit the system. By the late 1970s, Clarendon Court was no longer a home. It was an 18-room limestone mausoleum. This massive estate in Newport, Rhode Island, was a monument to psychological decay. On the outside, it was a palace overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. On the inside, it was a silent war zone. Sunny von Bülow was beautiful, wealthy, and deeply fragile. She hid her pain behind a gilded fortress. She struggled with severe depression. She drank heavily. She had a dangerous addiction to sweets and prescription pills. She was a woman drowning in her own privilege, self-medicating to escape the cold reality of her marriage. The family dynamic was toxic. Sunny had 2 children from her first marriage to an Austrian prince. These children, Annie Laurie and Alexander, lived in the same mansion. They began to notice strange, unsettling patterns. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Klaus was no longer the charming European aristocrat. He was cold. He was distant. He was increasingly hostile. Klaus was living a double life. He was spending his time in New York with a soap opera actress named Alexandra Isles. She was beautiful, ambitious, and tired of waiting for him to make a move. Alexandra Isles gave Klaus a brutal ultimatum. He had to divorce Sunny and marry her, or she would walk away forever. This ultimatum pushed Klaus into a corner. His entire existence was a mathematical equation. If he divorced Sunny, the prenuptial agreement would strip him of everything. He would go from living like a king to having $0. But if Sunny suffered a tragic end, the equation changed. Klaus would inherit $14 million outright. He would keep the mansion, he would keep the status, he would keep his place in high society. Klaus had to make a choice. He had to choose between complete poverty and the perfect crime. He chose to play a highly dangerous game of biological chess. He knew Sunny's weaknesses. He knew her body was already fragile from drugs and alcohol. He just needed the perfect opportunity to strike without leaving a trace. The tension inside Clarendon Court grew unbearable as the winter of 1979 approached. The trap was set. On a freezing night in late December, the first blow fell. The winter of 1979 was unforgiving. Inside the drafty stone walls of Clarendon Court, the cold was not just outside. It was in the air between Klaus and Sunny. During the Christmas holidays, the first crack in the foundation appeared. It was a quiet, clinical horror. Sunny was found slumped on her bathroom floor. Her skin was freezing. Her body temperature had plummeted to 81 degrees. She was dying. Klaus was there, but Klaus did not panic. He did not rush to the telephone. He did not dial for an ambulance. Instead, he waited. He watched. For hours, he insisted she was merely sleeping off a heavy hangover. He blocked anyone from intervening. He let the cold take hold. When doctors finally arrived, they were horrified. Sunny survived, but the illusion of a happy marriage was dead. The servants began to whisper. One woman in particular was not blinded by Klaus's aristocratic charm. Maria Schrahlhammer. She was Sunny's loyal maid. She had spent decades protecting the heiress. Now she became a silent detective inside the mansion. Maria watched Klaus. She noticed his movements. He was spending too much time in his master closet. He was handling prescription bottles with intense focus. And then Maria found it. A small black vinyl pouch. It was hidden deep inside his closet. Inside were drugs, syringes, needles. She did not touch it. She waited. Exactly 1 year later, in December 1980, the trap snapped shut. It was another freezing winter night at Clarendon Court. History did not just rhyme. It repeated itself with brutal precision. Sunny was found cold and unresponsive. Once again, Klaus delayed. Once again, he watched the clock. But this time, Sunny did not wake up. She slipped into a deep, permanent, vegetative state. Her brain was gone. Only her $75 million fortune remained. Sunny's children did not trust the local police. They did not trust Klaus. They bypassed the authorities entirely. They spent $400,000 to hire a ruthless private investigator. They launched a highly coordinated, corporate-style audit of Klaus's life. They targeted his finances, his mistress, and his master closet. And deep inside that dark closet, they seized the black vinyl pouch. What lay inside would trigger the most explosive legal warfare of the 20th century. In 1982, the gilded trap finally snapped shut. A Rhode Island jury looked at the cold, aristocratic face of Klaus von Bülow and saw a monster. They convicted him on 2 counts of attempted murder. The sentence was 30 years in prison. To the public, the story was over. The social climber had lost. But Klaus was a man who had spent his entire life playing high-stakes financial chess. He was not about to surrender to a prison cell. He did something incredibly bold. He used his prospective $14 million inheritance as collateral. He leveraged his comatose wife's future estate to secure millions of dollars in cash from wealthy backers. With this massive war chest, he hired Alan Dershowitz. Dershowitz was the most aggressive, relentless appellate lawyer in America. He did not care about morality. He cared about leverage. Dershowitz knew that to save Klaus, he had to completely dismantle the state's forensic narrative. This brings us back to the black vinyl pouch, the mysterious item hidden deep in the master closet. The prosecution called it a portable execution kit. They claimed it contained needles, syringes, and a vial of insulin. Most damning of all, they claimed a syringe inside was coated with Sunny's own DNA and high levels of insulin. It seemed like an open and shut case. But Dershowitz mobilized an army of elite medical experts and private investigators. They scrutinized the physical evidence under a biological microscope, and they found a massive, undeniable scientific flaw. The syringe had been dipped in insulin. It had not been injected. If that needle had actually pierced human skin, the flesh would have wiped the chemical residue clean off the metal. The prosecution's star piece of evidence was physically impossible. It was a staged, theatrical prop. The defense team exposed an even darker truth. The black vinyl pouch was not a murder kit. It was Sunny's own secret pharmacopoeia. It was her private stash of drugs used to self-medicate her profound depression. Klaus had not poisoned her. Sunny had slowly destroyed herself. In 1985, Klaus von Bülow was acquitted of all charges. He walked out of the courtroom a free man. But the legal victory was entirely hollow, because while Klaus had escaped a prison cell, Sunny's children were already preparing a financial guillotine that would strip him of every single dollar he had fought to inherit. Klaus walked out of the courtroom a free man. But in the high-stakes game of old money, freedom is not the same as victory. The criminal courts were finished with Klaus von Bülow. The family was not. Sunny's children, Alexander and Annie Laurie, possessed a weapon far more dangerous than the state prosecution. They had unlimited capital. They launched a massive $56 million civil lawsuit against Klaus. In a civil trial, the burden of proof is vastly lower. Klaus faced the prospect of a lifetime of litigation. His legal bills were already astronomical. The prospective $14 million inheritance was vanishing into the pockets of his elite defense attorneys. The family made their terms clear. They would weaponize the legal system, turning litigation into an expensive war of attrition. They would tie up every single penny Klaus had in court until he was bankrupt, old, and broken. To stop the bleeding, Klaus had to sign his own financial death warrant. In 1987, he made a final, devastating deal. He agreed to divorce his comatose wife. He waived all claims to her $75 million estate. He walked away with nothing. The social climber who spent decades chasing the ultimate fortune was cast out into the cold. He moved to a modest apartment in London, living off a tiny pension and writing book reviews. The grand mansion of Clarendon Court was sold. The Gilded Age dream was dead. Meanwhile, Sunny remained suspended in a sterile 28-year purgatory. She lay in a private high-security room at a Manhattan hospital. Her heart kept beating. Her lungs kept drawing breath. But the woman who once had everything was gone. The cost of keeping her physical shell alive was staggering, exceeding $10 million. She finally passed away in 2008. The fortune that was meant to build a dynasty was instead consumed by medical bills, private investigators, and elite defense attorneys. It was the ultimate autopsy of an empire. In the end, the von Bülow affair proved a cold truth about the elite. Wealth can buy the most brilliant lawyers on earth. It can rewrite the laws of evidence. But it cannot buy back a wasted life or stop the slow, heavy gravity of family betrayal. Subscribe to the channel to uncover the dark financial secrets behind the world's most powerful dynasties.